Hi and welcome to JAX. I've got Daniel Jones here with me. Hi.
Hello.
How do you like the conference so far?
It's great. I mean, the setting here is absolutely beautiful, and there seems to be a lot of people here.
Yeah, and your session was amazing. I was there.
Thank you very much.
You talked about continuous delivery, right? And the fact that it's better for your brain. How come?
So, the general thrust of the talk is about how there are various aspects to continuous delivery that just fit better with the human psyche. So, for example, the regularity of reward, being able to say that you've got something done and you've got something working and seeing it in production. For a start, being able to see that people are using your work is what's called an intrinsic motivator. Things like getting a bonus at the end of the year, a financial bonus, that's an extrinsic motivator. And it's been shown in a number of studies that extrinsic motivators actually make you less likely to do a thing that you enjoy doing anyway. Whereas intrinsic motivators are things that you want to do, the things that you want. So continuously delivering gives you a regular intrinsic reward. Being rewarded also increases your level of self-control, so that you're less likely to incur technical debt. So that's just one of the ways that continuous delivery can help with the psychological aspects of software delivery.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people see continuous delivery perhaps just as a technical transition of some sort, but is there perhaps more to it?
Absolutely, yeah. So after the session, I was talking to a few people that came up to me about how do you make these changes? Because continuous delivery as a technical practice is an enabler. It's a bit like putting someone who can ride a horse into a Ferrari and then them getting in the seat and shouting, giddy up. Right? They've got the thing that will let them go faster, but they don't know how to make use of it. So a massive part of that is organizational change and getting people to ask different questions. So at EngineerBetter, we do the continuous delivery stuff, we do the technical stuff, but we also do consultancy helping people to ask different questions. So for example, instead of what are the requirements, what are you going to deliver, the question should be, how do we want the world to be different? The minutiae of what's being delivered is less important than the effect it has on the world. Instead of asking, when is it going to be done, we should understand how urgent something is. How much is it going to cost us in lost opportunity if we don't get this done as soon as possible? And there are a number of different questions like that that you need to get management asking instead of the traditional management tool set in order to make continuous delivery effective. Otherwise, you've got a dev team that can go really fast, but the rest of the organisation is going really slow, and you end up with what's called a local optimization.
Mm-hmm. And technical debt plays a really big role in this, and it is often seen as the big bad wolf. How can we decrease it?
So technical debt is necessary to a point. If you never had any technical debt, it's a bit like running a business. You know, you need to have some capital around in order to invest with the hope that things are going to get better. So technical debt is necessary in order to allow you to do the simplest thing, because otherwise you have to think all the way into the future, and we're going to deliver this one perfect thing that's finely tuned to the set of requirements we've got. And in a world of uncertainty that we live in, that approach is going to lead to disappointment and features that you didn't really need. So technical debt is necessary, but it needs to be managed, and we need to make sure that we don't incur unnecessary technical debt. So one of the things that I feel quite strongly about is the use of deadlines in software delivery. And by continually, especially in Scrum, which tends to have deadlines every 2 weeks if you're making commitments about what's going to get done in a sprint, having those regular deadlines enforces a scarcity of time. And there's a thing called the scarcity effect, which shows that if you are aware that you don't have enough of something that's important to you, like time, you become less able to solve abstract problems, and you have less self-control. So you're more likely to incur technical debt when you have a deadline looming, because you are less able to think outside the box, and also you will have less self-control to resist the urge to cut corners. And you also have someone like hitting you over the head with a stick that is a deadline. So moving away from that approach of having deadlines and just saying, we're going to do the most important thing in the simplest way, and it will get done when it gets done. Like, that's a fundamental truth that's unavoidable. If you're doing the most important thing and you're doing it the simplest way based on the current requirements, it gets done when it gets done. Nothing can make that go faster other than cutting corners, which is incurring technical debt. And it's down to the team to manage the amount of technical debt they're willing to incur, not for the business stakeholders to insist, you're going to incur loads of technical debt because I'm going to shout at you over a deadline, because they don't know the repercussions of that.
That's good to know. And do technical debt and bad code go hand in hand? What's your take on that?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So, it also depends what you mean by bad code. There's nothing wrong with a simple solution. So people sometimes conflate simplicity and naivety with bad code. Bad code, in my mind, is something that is not maintainable or something that's not readable. Something that's single purpose and can't be abstracted and can't be reused is not necessarily intrinsically bad. We shouldn't make things overly generic and overly abstract too soon. That's a premature optimization. It's in a world of continuous delivery and software as a service, things that are not maintainable are bad code. I used to work in the games industry, not as a games programmer, but I worked alongside them. And it was really interesting seeing video games companies who used to go from shipping boxed product that as soon as it was out the door, no one's ever going to look at that source code again, to trying to deliver games as a service. And when you're writing a video game, the code has to be really, really quick. You've got 16 milliseconds to do everything you need to do to update the game world and draw the picture on the screen. So there were all sorts of filthy hacks and unmaintainable code that maybe only one person in the whole organization understood. When these companies now move to doing games as a service, where users expect, oh, there should be new features every 2 weeks, those companies really struggle with that approach. So in the context of continuous delivery and of software as a service, in the world we now live in where we expect stuff to get updated on a regular basis, unmaintainable code is probably bad code. And the quick hacks that you might make to meet a deadline, that's the kind of technical debt that is bad code. Single-use code, though, which in retrospect looks bad because it's not abstract and not reusable, I wouldn't say is bad code.
Speaking of business context and companies and everything, what should companies implement in order to have a successful continuous delivery?
Continuous delivery practice.
Exactly.
So, the things that people need to implement in order to have a successful continuous delivery practice, mostly a mindset. Okay, we need a technical solution. We need automation, ideally a platform as a service that takes a lot of manual work off the critical path. That's a kind of prerequisite. But you also need to have a mindset about continuous learning, about realizing that getting things done quickly is more important than getting things done cheaply. A lot of enterprises gear themselves up towards, well, we found out the best way of making this one thing, and now we found the one way of doing it, we're going to lower our costs everywhere. And that makes, that removes slack in the system, and it means that you're a specialist in that one thing. So if the world changes around you, you're all of a sudden in a very fragile place. So having leadership buy-in, that actually we live in a world of uncertainty, and despite their bold leadership proclamations that we know what the problem is, we're going to be able to fix it with this approach that I'm going to explicitly outline, that, hey, I don't know what the future is, but I'm a strong leader and I'll be able to roll with the punches. That's a fundamental part of successful continuous delivery, of making people understand that they need to be adaptable. And then having that permeate throughout the business, that it's okay to be wrong, it's okay to not know what the future holds. Once people understand that, then they stop trying to use management tools of the past, like deadlines, like requirement stocks, to force behavior out of people.
And continuous delivery is not a silver bullet, right? Because a lot of people tend to believe that, so it's better to make sure.
Absolutely. Continuous delivery is not a silver bullet. If you're building a nuclear power plant, I'd rather you didn't do it in an agile fashion, especially if I lived quite close to it. Continuous delivery is what is required for fast feedback loops. So when you've got a large deal of uncertainty, when you've got a large deal of certainty, when you're doing something that's fundamentally predictable, Newtonian motion, for example, continuous delivery sucks as an approach for getting a satellite or a space probe to Jupiter. Like, Newtonian gravity is well understood, fairly predictable. Like, we wouldn't use agile and continuous delivery there. But when we don't know how the world is going to react around us, and the world is full of complex adaptive systems in tight tension, where if one of them changes, all of a sudden the others spring out of control, that's where continuous delivery is useful, where we need to be able to sense the change from other actors in the system and react to it quickly. I used to teach jiu-jitsu, which is a traditional martial art, and one of the differences between jiu-jitsu and karate is in karate you hard block. Somebody punches you, you hard block it with as much force as you can. With jiu-jitsu, which can be translated as the gentle art, you grab the person's arm, they're punching you, and you try and feel where they're moving. You're getting feedback about how they're moving their balance so you can use it against them. And continuous delivery is kind of like that. We're getting feedback from the world around us so we can change. But if we have strong predictability, then we don't need to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Last but not least, kindly finish the following sentence.
Oh.
The road to continuous delivery is paved with...
The road to continuous delivery is paved with... Should I be cynical or should I not be not?
Go ahead.
It's often paved with frustrations of trying to get people to understand it. And I think that's something that as a industry we need to get better at, of making people above us in the organisation understand that the mindset needs to change here. People will use the tools they're comfortable with. There are project managers out there who are used to thinking the world is predictable and using a certain set of management tools like deadlines, like requirement stocks, to get what they want, and they're being asked to do so by their managers. So we need to have sympathy and empathy for those people and explain why this is a better way of doing things and how it allows us to adapt with change. And I talk to a lot of software engineers who are frustrated that the rest of their business doesn't understand this, but it's like, who's going to make them understand? Cultural change is hard, people change is hard, and I got fed up of working at other businesses where people just go, oh, well, it's a people problem. Yeah, it's a people problem, which is why we need to fix it. And that's one of the reasons that Dan and I started EngineerBetter, was to help with those people problems.
That's it. Thanks a lot for the interview.
Thank you very much.